Hello, my name is Gelby, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a Metropolis city in Minecraft. This is a block palette that we'll be using for a majority of the builds. We might make some builds darker or lighter, but I tend to stick with this specific block palette for most of my city builds. The first build we're going to be making is just your standard apartment building. A major part of this type of build is the sort of outcroppings by the windows. I don't know what they're called, don't ask me. They're gonna help differentiate this build from all the other builds just because only apartments would have this type of outcropping in its build. Other than that small difference, this apartment building is basically the same as any other build you'd make. For some final details on the build, you can add an antenna with iron bars and a redstone torch and some iron bars everywhere to look like wires. An important part in basically any metropolis city, any big city that you go to, is all the neon signs that are everywhere. You can put some unique designs on them using colored glass panes. Most big cities like this cannot afford to waste any space because they need all that space. So if you find any extra corners where there isn't anything, you should put something there, like little shops and stuff. This also makes your builds way more interesting to look at when you're walking around on the ground level. It also adds some depth that your build might be missing. Now it's time to use those tips to make more builds for the city that we're going to be making. You don't just have to make simple boxes for your builds. You can create some depth and make it look more interesting. Another way to create depth and to just make your builds look cooler is to add gradients to your builds. You can find interesting gradients for your builds on websites online, or Axiom also has tools built in to help you with your gradients. When making a gradient in your build, try not to think of each block as a block with a texture, and instead think of it as a color you can use in your gradient. For example, I literally use pumpkins in this build, but you don't see that because you're just looking at the color. All the builds that I've shown you so far have had like a light gray color palette, and we're about to change that. It's very important to use different colors and textures for different structures when you're making a big build like a city, because then the textures don't get all muddled together and everything looks coherent. Now that we have all of our buildings, we can actually start making the city now. When you're placing down all your builds, try to put your best or your most interesting builds in the front, so they'll be the main centerpiece and the main focus when people look at your builds. You can place some generic gray boxes behind your builds to make it look like there are more structures when there really isn't, and I like to use this to basically cheat in a sort of way. All you need to do to finish up is texture the road and the sidewalk, and then you're done. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and got inspired or found something useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!